take place in just under a week's time on the 27th of January is "Don't stand by." The Holocaust didn't begin with a systematic slaughter of Jews in Europe, or even with a brick through the window of a Jewish shop during the Kristallnacht of 1938. It began with a simple idea that our differences mark us out as superior or inferior to one another. It was that simple idea that spawned a hateful ideology expressed through Hitler's Nazism that the Jews were at the centre of a global conspiracy to control the world at the expense of Aryan destiny. 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis, among them 1 million Jewish children. It was premeditated slaughter on an industrial scale, never before witnessed in human history. Alongside innocent Jewish men, women and children were political prisoners, Romanis, Slavs, gay people, Jehovah's Witnesses, Russian prisoners of war, and many others. They met their fate on the streets, where they were beaten, sometimes to death. In concentration camps, where they were often worked or starved to the point where they lost their lives. And, most chillingly, they lost their lives in the gas chambers of the Nazi death camps. It is estimated that some 42,500 facilities in German and Nazi-occupied territory were used to concentrate victims, and around 200,000 people were perpetrators of the Holocaust planned by Nazi leaders at Wannsee. But this year's theme for Holocaust Memorial Day isn't about leaders, it's about bystanders. The bystanders who said nothing as Nazi propaganda targeted the Jews. The bystanders who watched as Jewish homes and businesses were ransacked by the Nazis. And the bystanders who looked the other way, even as the sickly smell of burning human flesh from the ovens was carried from the chimneys of the Nazi death camps to surrounding homes by prevailing winds. So though we might reflect today on the unique crimes of the Nazi Holocaust, we should never avert our eyes from the most uncomfortable truth of all, that its perpetrators were not unique. They were ordinary men and women carrying out acts of extraordinary evil. Madam Deputy Speaker, if the Holocaust demonstrated the very worst of human nature, its survivors represent the very best. The crimes they witnessed and the evil to which they were subjected are impossible to imagine. But through the courage of so many survivors of the Holocaust, we are able to reflect on its horrors so that we might learn the right lessons as we strive towards a world free from hatred, persecution and genocide. Many of us will have personal experience of listening to the testimony of survivors, and I'm delighted that so many of them were recognised in the New Year's Honours List. I'd like to pay particular tribute to one of my constituents, Ivor Pearl, who received the BEM for services to Holocaust education and awareness. On accepting the honour, Ivor said, "I think I can speak for most of us when I say that when I give talks, I feel all the victims are there behind me, looking over my shoulder, and as such, I accept this honour on their behalf as well." Another resident of Ilford North, Bob Obuchowski, would surely be among them. Bob lived in Clayhall and passed away in 2014. His double act with his daughter, Sue Bermange, was almost legendary, as Sue supported Bob to share his testimony and continues his work today. And in this context, I would like to champion the work of the Holocaust Educational Trust. Led by the indomitable Karen Pollock, their outstanding work keeps the memory of those remarkable Holocaust survivors alive, so that each generation can bear witness to their extraordinary fortitude and reflect on how it was that ordinary men and women unleashed the horror of the Nazi Holocaust. Their Lessons from Auschwitz project has now taken over 28,000 students and teachers from across the UK to the Nazi concentration and death camp Auschwitz-Birkenau. These include students from my own constituency, most recently from King Solomon High School and Woodbridge High School, who travelled to Poland in October 2015. I pay tribute to successive Labour, Coalition and Conservative governments for funding these visits, and I hope that the Minister may be able to give us some good news about continuing funding for this important project this afternoon, or at least take away the desire of this House to see that funding continued. I certainly will give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to pay great credit to Karen Pollock. May I also point out I am deeply appreciative of someone that established the Srebrenica safe area in March, April 1993, because Karen Pollock also says that the Holocaust Memorial refers to the 8,373 Bosnian Muslims who were killed in a Holocaust much closer to our time. And I appreciate very much that the Holocaust Memorial Fund cares about them just as much as it does to the victims of the foul Nazis.
Wes Streeting.
I'm incredibly grateful for that intervention and absolutely share the sentiments expressed, and I will come on to talk about other genocides later in my speech. I know from my own community in Redbridge that schools across the country are doing some outstanding work to deliver Holocaust education as part of the national curriculum, including, of course, acknowledgement of other genocides. It's vital that Holocaust education remains a compulsory part of the national curriculum at Key Stage 3 to make sure all young people receive this valuable part of our educational curriculum. I also congratulate the Prime Minister on his initiative to establish the Holocaust Commission and on the appointment of the Right Honourable Member for Brentwood and Ongar as the Government's Special Envoy for Post-Holocaust Issues. I know that he is respected on all sides of the House for his commitment and determination and the way he goes about his work in that role. With the onward march of time, the number of survivors left to bear living witness to the crimes of the Holocaust diminishes. And so with every new generation comes an even greater responsibility to make sure that their warning from history is never forgotten. Of course, even as they rebuilt their lives, many continued to suffer, whether through silence, because the crimes they suffered were unspeakable, premature death as a result of the injuries they sustained, or the ongoing persecution they experienced as a result of being different. Among them were those who were brandished with the pink triangle, the Nazi mark of the homosexual. Like other victims of the Nazi Holocaust, gay men and women were rounded up by the Gestapo. Many were imprisoned. Some were castrated and subjected to cruel medical experiments. Others met their end in the gas chambers of the death camps. For so many of these people, the end of the Second World War did not bring about their liberation. Nazi law remained in place. The suffering at the hands of the state continued. Some were even sent back to prison by the very same judges that had sent them off to the concentration camps under the Nazis. Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't mind telling the House that I wept last summer in Berlin as I read the stories of those LGBT survivors of the Holocaust who had later gone to their graves unable to share their stories, shunned by their governments, and without any acknowledgement of the suffering they had experienced under the Nazis and, I'm afraid to say, the subsequent governments of West and East Germany. I am inspired by Holocaust survivors like Rudolf Brasda, who was the last known concentration camp survivor deported specifically for homosexuality. Before the Nazis came to power, he and his boyfriend had been accepted in an increasingly tolerant society. A Jehovah's Witness accepted them as her tenants, and Brasda's family acted as witnesses to a symbolic marriage ceremony in their home. But as Berlin's thriving lesbian and gay scene was dismantled by the Nazi regime, Brasda and his partner were arrested, and they never saw each other again. Brasda served a 6-month sentence before being deported to Czechoslovakia. He was arrested again in 1941 and was forced to serve another 14-month prison term. In August 1942, he was deported to the Buchenwald concentration camp. There he was beaten, once having his teeth knocked out. He was subjected to forced labour. He survived only through a combination of strength and luck. And it wasn't until 2008, ahead of the unveiling of the memorial to homosexual victims of Nazism in Berlin, that he felt able to speak out. Those countries that continue to legally discriminate against LGBT people, and those that would have those countries continue to discriminate against LGBT people, should reflect on his words before his death in 2011. He said, "If I finally speak, it's for people to know what we, homosexuals, had to endure in Hitler's days. It shouldn't happen again." Madam Deputy Speaker, I pay tribute to all those communities targeted by Nazi hatred and to their survival. In particular, I pay tribute to Jewish communities in the United Kingdom, the State of Israel, and countries around the world that stand tall in lasting defiance of Hitler's evil ideology. I'm proud of the Jewish community I represent in Ilford North. Though smaller in number than previous decades, the Jewish community in Redbridge continues to flourish. Chabad Lubavitch, led by Rabbi Sufrin, has expanded its activities within Redbridge and out into Essex. I recently attended shul with Redbridge United Synagogue, which now meets at the Redbridge Jewish Community Centre. Sinclair House is the largest community centre of its kind in Western Europe, delivering social, welfare, education and community programmes to more than 2,000 people every week. While Ilford Jewish Primary School, Clor Tikva Primary School and King Solomon High School provide high-quality education to children from all our diverse communities, while maintaining their proud Jewish heritage and traditions. And next week, as we do every year, people from all parts of the community will gather at the Holocaust Memorial Garden in Valentine's Park in Ilford, thanks to the initiative led by Councillor Alan Weinberg to provide a lasting memorial for victims of the Holocaust. Madam Deputy Speaker, though the Jewish community in Redbridge and elsewhere continues to thrive, we cannot be complacent about the threat posed by modern anti-Semitism, whether it manifests itself on the right or the left of the political spectrum. I'm proud to be a Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group Against Anti-Semitism, under the exceptional leadership of my honourable friend, the Member for Bassett Law. Successive reports published by the Community Security Trust, to whom I pay tribute, shows a continual increase in anti-Semitic incidents across the United Kingdom, including violent attacks. Last year, a delegation from the APPG visited France to look at the rise in anti-Semitism there, where thousands had taken to the streets to pronounce Je suis juif in the wake of the murder of Jews on the streets of Paris. And we know that while Jewish people make a great contribution to public life here, too many Jews in politics are targets for anti-Semitism, both online and offline. Many honourable and right honourable members will recall my predecessor, Lee Scott, speaking powerfully in this debate last year about his experience of receiving abuse and death threats because he was Jewish. And I pay tribute to him again for his courage and unshakable commitment in standing up against that anti-Semitism. Madam Deputy Speaker, never again is a common refrain at events to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day. But I'm afraid these words ring hollow. Never again will only find meaning when Jews can live freely and safely in all parts of the world. Never again will only find meaning when difference and diversity is celebrated rather than denigrated. Never again will only find meaning when genocide is confined to history. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to end with a reflection about our responsibility, both as individuals and as the state. And I'm pleased to see the Honourable Member for Newark in his place, who is Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Genocide Prevention. Often, debates in this place about Britain's foreign policy consider the consequences of action and under the shadow of previous mistakes. But as Holocaust Memorial Day is used to commemorate all victims of genocide, and as a Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Genocide Prevention, I hope that this House, in its future deliberations, will also consider the consequences of introspection and inaction. The genocide in Cambodia, the genocide in Rwanda, the genocide in Darfur, each should rest on the consciences of powerful nations who chose to look the other way. And closer to home, it is for every citizen to reflect on those occasions when we have looked the other way, when someone was called a name, when someone was mistreated, when someone was bullied, beaten, or even murdered because they were different. Yehuda Bauer said, "Thou shalt not be a victim, thou shalt not be a perpetrator, but, above all, thou shalt not be a bystander." It is fitting for the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, and an exhortation for this House and for every citizen we are sent here to represent.
The question is as on the order paper. Sir Eric Pickles. I'm most grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm particularly grateful to follow the honourable gentleman from Ilford North.